the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He's a film and documentary composer, none other than Mr. Alec Harrison. Welcome, Mr. Alec on Abstract Essay. Can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for having me. So I'm a television and film composer. I've been working in the industry about 25 years, and I'm based just south of Calgary in Alberta, Canada. And yeah, I've worked on feature films, feature documentaries, commercial work, and yeah, it's been my dream job for many years.
Hmm. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Alec. Thank you. And today let's talk about AI and the future of film music. We often hear AI described as a tool. For a film composer, what does the collaboration actually look like on a practical level? Are you programming, directing, or conversing with the AI?
Hmm, it's a good question. Um, so yeah, I mean, if we think about AI in terms of as a tool, I think it can be very helpful when it comes to a lot of the administration work that a composer often has to do, which is a lot of spreadsheets and things called cue sheets, where you're entering start and end times and keeping track of all your cues in a film. But when it comes to actually creating music, I mean, there's some great AI tools that will write a song for you in 20 seconds, but I don't know that that's going to have a real impact on film scoring or documentary scoring as a complete tool for writing music or writing cues for a film. I don't I don't I don't think AI is really designed for that kind of work. And if it does get there, then we have to talk about how are we going to, how are we going to deal with that?
Mr. Alec, can AI serve as a meaningful creative sparring partner early in the process? For example, generating a thematic ideas based on a script, mood board, or how does that differ from a traditional temp track?
Hmm. It's a good one. I think you could potentially take temp music and feed it to an AI and say, "Hey, can you tell me what it is about this piece that makes it sound, you know, magical or intense or dramatic?" And I'm thinking AI could probably break it down and give you some musical language. But I think again, that's going to be very helpful for maybe people who are starting out in their career, starting to study music. It's a good way to get a little bit of a fast track on understanding the musical language of existing cues. But I think once you've been doing it for a little while, your ear will do that just as quick. And I think a lot of composers would be hesitant to allow an AI to create a thematic idea because it's not really yours. The whole draw of being a composer and a musician is to come up with your own material. But I think again, for someone starting out, it might be a nice way to kind of jumpstart the process um, and start writing a little bit quicker.
Interesting, Mr. Alex. So, where do you draw the line between using AI for inspiration and becoming over reliant on it? Is there a danger of homogenizing the sound of film music?
I think there is, and I think that when you listen to the evolution of film music over the years, it's become much broader in its scope, and we tend to be drawn to unique instruments and unique combinations of things more than just a standard sort of orchestral film score. I think there's so many artists and areas of expertise where people can really focus. And so I think if AI starts to take away the initial struggle of writing a piece of music, I think that's where it gets dangerous, because that's really the, as a composer, I think that's really the draw, is staring at a page or a blank screen and going, what am I going to do next? If AI is taking that initial thought away, or that initial idea, I think the job itself fundamentally changes.
Definitely. One promise of AI is to handle technical, time consuming tasks like orchestration, Mac apps, or even generating endless variation of code for different edit length. Is these the where its greatest immediate value lies freeing composer the higher level creative work?
I think so. I think taking away, or helping expedite repetitive tasks. Um, there are a lot of technical things that a composer has to do when delivering music, and AI might be a great tool to sort of check back what you've done to ensure that you're meeting audio specifications. It could work well as kind of a second ear, just to ensure that you don't have anything that you've missed. You could say, here's an example. When you finish a cue and it's going to the engineer to be mixed into the show, you're delivering that cue in several what we call stems, or individual tracks. And so those individual tracks, when played back, should sound exactly like the music file you delivered for approval. And AI may be handy in just comparing those two to make sure they sound the same. And and if it could pick out an instrument that's maybe missing, where, oh, you didn't include the triangle or something. I think AI can be very helpful in that aspect, taking away those, minimizing human error. Um, but I think that's very different than having AI initiate the creative process.
On originality, ethics, and industry, the training data for music AI is built on the work of human composers, often without direct consent or compensation. If this is existential ethical issue for the field and how it could be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with AI is it's pulling its ideas and its content from existing pieces. It's learning from existing music. And so, if we think about AI releasing music on Spotify or something, or even having, um, songs that it's written that get placed into films or TV series, it's taking away jobs from songwriters. And I think there's an ethics in that we will definitely have to address, because that would be a concern if it became more popular.
Definitely. And let's talk about the on originality ethics and the industry itself. The training data from for music AI is built on the work of human composer. And could AI democratize film as well, allowing indie filmmakers with a tiny budget to access high quality, emotionally specific music, or it will simply widen the gap between those who use AI as a cheap fix for those who cannot afford top composer using AI as a super tool.
Hmm. I think I would imagine it will get to the point in the near future where it could, quote, watch a film or a documentary and score it for a director.
Mm.
But I also think that if you are a director or writer, composer, anyone in the field, you didn't enter into this field to work with machines. You entered into the field because you're a storyteller and you want to work with other people who are also storytellers. And I think if you ask, and I've talked to a number of directors about this, and colleagues, and there's a real resilience, or a real resistance against that, because we don't, as creative artists and storytellers, we don't want to be working in a silo, creating things with machines, even if it works well. I think you miss kind of the point of being a filmmaker or being a documentary filmmaker or you know being a storyteller. If you're replacing fellow human beings with machines, that's almost a different industry and a different category. And I have a hard time seeing how that could be popular. And you raise a really good point, because if you have a young filmmaker with a small budget and they can go to AI and AI will just score their film for them, they're also missing out on the really important step of working with their colleagues who are also starting out. So you have a filmmaker starting, and they meet up with a composer who's young. That's a great match, and it's worked well for decades and decades and decades. So I think now if you have a young filmmaker coming in and saying, "Well, I don't need a composer, I don't need I don't need anyone to edit, I don't need anyone to color correct," you're abandoning all of those other skill sets that are also starting out in the field, and that I don't know how sustainable that is, to be honest.
What happens to the ecosystem of musicians, copyists, or orchestrators if AI becomes proficient in these supporting roles? Is this inevitable disruption we must adapt to, Mr. Alec?
Yeah, I think what happens. It's funny. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking with one of the CEOs at Google, and he was talking about this very idea of disruption in any industry, and he had a really interesting point. And he said, if your job disappears, three other jobs related in the field that use AI will appear. And he's like, if you're a lawyer or a doctor, and in this case, an orchestrator or a copyist, and if AI is making things much quicker, you're probably just doing more work in a year. So if you have this tool that can allow you to much more quickly get a result, but still with human interaction, we may just see orchestrators and copyists just doing, five times more films because they can work much more quickly. They can have an AI constantly checking their work, making suggestions, but we still have this human involvement. And I could see that being helpful, but I think you will just scale up the amount of things you can do in a day versus being completely replaced.
On new artistic possibilities, beyond efficiency, are there entirely new forms of musical expression or narrative techniques that AI unlocks? For instance, a dynamical adaptive score that changes in real time based on a viewer's biometrics or choices.
Well, that's interesting. I think we will see, and there will potentially be a new. You could almost see a new genre of film where you could have, say, a short film that has a beginning, middle, and an end, and an arc, and all of the typical things. And AI may make it possible for you to then choose a different ending, and AI kicks in and gives you a different ending or a different version of that story. Um, there may be entire AI film festivals where everything's done with AI. But again, I'm not sure what the public's appetite will be for completely computer generated content. I think it's kind of cool in like a short form, but I'm not sure if people will sit through a 2-hour movie knowing that it's been completely AI generated. I think that leaves something. There's something missing. I think we feel like we're not completely connecting with that story.
Mr. Alec, imagine a director's mode where the score's genre, instrumentation, and emotional tone can be subtly shifted post production. Is this a fascinating new layer of storytelling or threat to a composer's definitive vision?
I think something like that could be an interesting learning tool, especially if you're trying to decide between two variations of a cue. Um, and I think that may be handy at a certain point in the process where the composer has delivered cues in the score that haven't been recorded live by an orchestra yet or anything. There's still what we call mock-ups in the computer where the composer's done all that work. AI may be able to come in and make a few shifts that the director and the composer together can say, that maybe will go darker there like that. But I still think it's going to come back to the hands of the composer to actually make that change, especially if you're recording live instruments like an orchestra. You'll need those musical changes replicated on the page. So it could be an interesting like learning tool, which is again where I see AI as like a sister, as a booster in education, as a way for composers to learn and explore more quickly without spending hours and hours going down a path and going, oh no, I don't know if that worked very well or not. AI may be able to just sort of skip ahead and give you a few options that just save you time. That could be quite interesting. And again, if with new composers coming into the industry, if that's what they're used to and they know it exists, then the shift may not be quite as difficult.
Mr. Ali, could AI help us rediscover or reimagine loss of unfinished musical styles for periods piece or generate music in the voice of a specific historical composer as narrative device?
Yeah, I think it could. I mean, any music that we hear really before the beginning of the 20th century is music that we don't have recordings of how it sounded when Mozart wrote or what Chopin sounded like. We just have sheet music. So there is a degree of interpretation. We're probably pretty close to what those composers intended. But I think even finding like, recordings that have been damaged or manuscripts, like sheet music that maybe isn't in the best shape. I think AI could come in and learn from like what time period this is written in, what were the other influential composers, and maybe fill in some gaps and help us restore music that may not otherwise be heard. And certainly, I think you could ask AI to write you something in the style of, Tchaikovsky. It will do it for you. The application of that, I'm not sure. I think if a filmmaker is looking for, Tchaikovsky as either a reference or a specific piece, they'll want that specific piece because of its familiarity, not necessarily a sound alike. But again, I think from an education standpoint, saying, hey, write me a Bach, fugue, and then break out all the parts and explain to me, musically what makes that thing sound the way it does. I think AI could be phenomenal as a teacher.
Phenomenal indeed. Will AI foster a new handicrafted aesthetic backlash where purely human composed music becomes premium selling point like analog digital age?
Yeah, like so you're asking like, will it be something that people are seeking out to have a human composer versus AI?
Yes.
I think I think that art is going to see a little bit of a dip in terms of this. There's going to be, I think, a bit more of a fear of being replaced, and then I think we're going to see a resurgence of value put on human beings doing what human beings have always done. And AI is going to find a home, I think, alongside artists, but I don't think AI is necessarily going to entirely replace artists. And AI may be great at creating new sounds that we can work with and actually write with, that we couldn't do before. And I think it could open up a whole nother, sonic world where composers discover like, man, I can tell AI to create like, a brass sound, but what would it sound like if it was also bowed like a cello? Like things you would have a really hard time achieving right now. AI may be able to come along and help us morph and create new sounds and noises we can work with. But I think that there will still be a very high value put on human beings doing the creative work.
Looking 20 years ahead, do you envision a future where the Oscars for Best Original Score is won by human AI collaborative team? What would the criteria for that award even be?
You know, I could see it, and I think that I think there will be rules, and I think that the awards, my guess is the awards won't change a whole lot in terms of their format. I don't think we'll be addressing it like the Oscar for AI supported score goes to. I think it will just be, you know what, it's kind of similar to how the industry evolved from the 80s to today. If in 1980 you and I were talking and I said to you, by 2025, 2026, we're going to have entire orchestras in the computer. The composer is going to be able to write for every instrument and make changes on the fly. And for the most part, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between the strings in the computer and the strings that are live. And we're going to go, well, how do we address that at the Oscars? Because like, what if some of these cues actually make it into the film without going to the orchestra, which is what happens today. There's lots of occasions where cues don't actually, not every cue in the film goes to the orchestra. But we've just absorbed that technology, and I think AI will be a similar thing where there'll be some rules around what it's allowed to do, and it will take a lot of the administrative, repetitive tasks away from the composer and the copyist. And I'd like to think that we'll just continue to make really good art with more efficiencies in the tasks that AI is really good at. But I don't envision a world where the latest greatest composers going up on stage with like a laptop and like having the laptop address the crowd like, hey, this AI wrote the first 20 minutes of the film or came up with the main themes, and it's like accepting an Oscar. I think if that happens, we're all in trouble.
Definitely. So, some fear of a gray goose scenario for film music, a bland algorithmic average for everything that's come before. What safeguards or human interventions are necessary to ensure AI fosters innovation rather than stagnation?
Mm. I think that there's going to have to be some collective agreements. I think that having, whether it be musicians unions or other similar groups are probably already coming up with frameworks to say, at a certain level, AI cannot do the following things. And I think that trigger will happen somewhere within the professional realm. That if you're talking about Hollywood films, I think there'll be a real desire for it to be, look, you can't just have anyone in their living room with a computer writing a film score and submitting it for an Oscar, or being able to, Steven Spielberg is not likely to suddenly turn to AI for his next film. And I think as you move down the professional scale, I think AI becomes a little more useful, and maybe people don't mind as much. You've got a film, first year film student who is using AI to score his film. But again, I think the desire is going to be for that filmmaker to go to a human being and say, look, AI has tempted my film, so I know kind of what I'm looking for. And I think that people will naturally, I don't want to say self-govern, but I think there will be a natural desire by all of the artists and the creatives and the people doing the work to just gravitate towards each other. And there'll be some legislation, I think, in place to sort of say, in the upper echelons, here's what here's much like it is with Screen Acting Skills. They're really working hard to try to keep AI contained to what it's allowed to do, and I think it's going to be the same with film music as well.
Mr. Alec, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course, my book 101 review in its sixth season this year is Comedy 101 in its third season, and Food 101 in sixth season as well, Geography 101, Love Letters, Movie 101 Review, Music 101, fourth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in third season of my baby podcast, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Alec ultimately is the integration of all AI into film, music, and inevitably evolution of the form or the art form, similar to the move from live piano to digital workstation? Or is it a fundamental revolution that changes what music is in film?
Wow. I think it's a little bit of both. Um, and I think that this technology is just moving so fast that it's hard to compare it to anything that's come before. You know, it's taken 25 or 30 years to have digital sampled orchestras sound really good. And also, it's a lot of learning for people to kind of understand how to make those sounds work to sound like an orchestra, whereas AI is doing it all for you. So we really haven't had a tool where your barrier of entry is very low. Like you can have very limited skill, and AI is going to do 90-95% of the work for you. So I think that it will. I think it's going to revolutionize the education and the learning curve that a lot of us go through. I can see a scenario where I buy a new plugin, I buy a new graphics library, and I say to AI, "Hey, give me a tutorial on how to be most effective with this library and how to use it, to its fullest possibility, and sort of cut out all of the human error and the learning curve, and have AI go, here's a template, and here I wrote something for you, and here's what I did, and here's why it sounds really good, and then you can go and learn from that." I think that's where the revolution of it is going to come from, which will only improve everyone's skill set. And again, my hope is we just continue to create meaningful art.
Meaningful for sure. Meaningful art. Mr. Alec, I'm inviting you to please do come over to Movie 101 Review and let's talk about your movies, your documentaries, and let's promote to the world. So, Mr. Alec Harrison, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Abstract? Essay.
Yeah, my website at alecharrison.com has all of my recent work, and I just want to say thanks for having me. It was great, good conversation.
Yes, likewise, Mr. Alec, empowering answer, and I hope our listeners or viewers empowered them. So, Mr. Alec, thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Thanks so much. We'll see you.
Welcome, people. See you soon.